I actually have a two-pronged approach to the environment. One is a national approach and one is a European approach. The national approach is to try to initiate citizen-initiated referendum to bring that into our Constitution. That's what we stand for. And that'll enable citizens to work together to protect the environment. And then secondly, to work in the European Union to make the European Citizens Initiative have more power or more bite, so that it's, when I debated the European Citizens Initiative, they said you would have the same power as the Parliament, and previously what it did, it could bring something to the attention of the Commission. So, but now that the Parliament has a joint power with the Council, I hope to campaign to have the European Citizens Initiative have that power as well. Now, in terms of my experience, I've been the chairman of 2 organic food co-ops. I was the chairman of the Dublin Food Co-op here in Ireland, which is the largest organic food co-op in Ireland at this point. I've owned several Priuses. I've been driving Prius for about 10 years. I've worked with Amazon Indians to help them protect the rainforest by raising money for them so they could hire solicitors. I've decoded my DNA and I understand the predispositions that I have for different types of cancers, and that's why I'm adamant about getting the carcinogens out of the environment, because if you understand your DNA, then you can understand if you don't eat organic food, what can happen to you. So I've been campaigning for that as well. In addition, I've always, I have electricity, on a local level. I always believe that what you do is you act locally, think globally, and I also very much believe in don't communicate, because that protects the environment. So that's pretty much what I stand for. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jan.
Thank you. Well, there's a water framework directive. I'm against fracking. And the Water Framework Directive says that we need to have pure water. So therefore, I want to protect water, because I think water is a right and water is necessary for life. So anything to protect the water, I would definitely be for. As well as the Habitats Directive, I believe in biodiversity, not only in the animal species, but also in the plant species, because the plants are full of really powerful molecules that can be good for health, and especially even in the Amazon rainforest. And as we destroy the habitats, we're also losing the benefit of all these plants, and there's still a lot to learn about the plants. Another thing I would campaign for is Ireland has an over-reliance on wind energy, and that's because Ireland has never had a feed-in tariff for solar. And with a feed-in tariff for solar, it means that every rooftop in the country can become an energy generation station, and will lessen the over-reliance on big business and their wind turbines. So that's another thing I would really campaign for, to make us more energy independent, and even you as the individual to be more energy independent, so that you can produce your own energy using your rooftop or your wall, because the solar cell photovoltaic technology has improved quite a lot, and it works really well in low light now. One of the biggest producers of solar energy using solar voltaics is Germany, who has an atmosphere and a climate similar to ours. So that's something I would campaign for, to make sure that we lessen our reliance on wind, wave, and biomass. The actions that the EU needs to take to address climate crisis. Well, one thing, if you actually take the top, I don't say 100 multinational companies, and you look at the profits that they make and the amount of items that they're producing, when they're producing that, they're also polluting the environment. And I've seen some numbers that, they say these multinationals have made X trillion dollars total of revenue, but you could actually also look at those corporations and say also X trillion dollars worth of damage to the environment. So I think it's really important that when we assess multinationals and the revenue that they produce, that we also assess the amount of damage that they do to the environment. So I think that's a really important thing, because that really can put it in perspective, so we can really truly assess what's going on with these companies. Because the market is always going on and on about the marketplace and how great it is, but you could almost have another marketplace where you could actually show the damage. So it's really important that everyone's held accountable. I think that's very important. In addition, I think it's important that we really develop our fiber network, that every home in Ireland, as well as the EU, has fiber optic to the home, so that we can all work from home, and we, as the price of petrol goes up, and that we can get more and more into working from home. And it doesn't really matter with all the tools that we have now. We can do all our social networking. We can have our video conferences. We can have all our meetings. We can do all our emails. And I think it's really important that if we work from home more, then we can also minimize the impact to the environment, as well as we can spend more time with our families. And I think that's really important as well. Biodiversity. No, I would be somebody who campaigns for organic living, because for example, when Monsanto uses their Roundup, they kill everything in the soil, and you have new types of life forms that are coming forward that naturally didn't come forward because of the strength of the pesticides. So I would be someone, when you do everything organically, then you actually build up the soil, and you allow all the little living organisms to live, and it makes the soil very rich. And that's the way that we protect our environment. That's the way you protect your biodiversity. A lot of the soil that's being lost is like, sure, when the British were building their ships and they cut down all the forests in Ireland, I would say that you need to get the forests back as much as possible. If you're giving farmers a subsidy through CAP, why not give them a subsidy to grow lots of deciduous trees, natural to the environment. In addition, so I would be very much into campaigning for anything. See, because I believe that this is all about life and living, and I feel like if you were sitting on a tree branch with a saw and you were sawing off the tree branch, at some point it couldn't sustain your weight anymore, and you're going to fall off the tree. And I feel like with all the policies and everything that we're doing here, is that we're just sawing the branch on the tree, and at some point the branch is going to break off and we're going to be in deep trouble. Now the thing is that all the laws that are being crafted are being lobbied by big, large interests. So if we work together to get citizen-initiated referendum, we could then overrule the governments that are crafting the laws, because we're the sovereign people. All we have to do is give ourselves that power back. Not vote once every 5 years, but be a watchdog to the government, give ourselves citizen-initiated referendum to be able to overrule any of the laws that we don't agree with. Thank you. Okay, Cork wants to win the Green Award, the European Green Capital Award. Well, one thing I think that it would be really good is if our parks were full of fruit trees, if everybody would just start planting all kinds of fruit trees, so that if there ever was some kind of a shock to the system, we could go out and eat all the fruit off the trees. And if you're walking around in the park, you can have a nice apple or a pear. I think that all of the buses and all of the public transport should be using some type of alternative method to produce the energy. Maybe electric. Maybe you could have electric. Everything be electric. I think you need to purify the water. Purify the water. Do everything. Do everything you can, and tick every single box that you possibly can to improve the environment. And so that is on getting carcinogens out of the environment, to purify the air, purify the water, make sure there's food growing everywhere, and lots of flowers. Flowers are wonderful, make people happy, and especially roses. Imagine plant. These days when you smell a rose, so many of the roses, they don't even have a scent on them anymore. Imagine being able to cultivate roses that actually smell like roses, and you can walk through the city and you can smell gardenias and roses and just wafting through the air. I mean, I would love to see something like that. maybe more organic restaurants and solar power everywhere. You know, and the thing about solar and wind, you know, when it's not shining, the wind is blowing. So you need a combination of maybe small wind generators on your house and solar. You could do that everywhere and make sure that every rooftop is used for that. That would be nice. Thank you. I mean, if you like to do hill walking and you like to hike around, I mean, it's the worst thing in the world is to walk into a place where they've just cut a bunch of trees. I mean, I almost want to cry when I see that kind of stuff, you know. So the whole thing about it is when I think of, you know, increasing the tree cover, and it's a store of carbon, is not to harvest the trees, but actually allow the trees to grow, because part of the problem with climate change is the fact that we're cutting down all the trees, and we need the trees. We need lots of trees, you know, and so I would support. You know, the call for funding for CELT, and not only that, the whole thing about biodiversity and habitats. You know, it's a whole science. You know, like if you go into a forest and you start to analyze all the different creatures that are in 1 square meter of forest, all the different organisms that are living there, and all the whole relationship between the organisms and the trees and the plants. It's an entire. I mean, the scientists even today are having trouble getting their head around it. You know, so I would support scientists doing that type of research to really understand how the habitat works, and to understand the biodiversity of it, and to learn how to then seed our land so that we can recreate those habitats and recreate that biodiversity that we're losing because of all of the things that are happening today.
Thanks a million.
Okay, so the scrub clearance now, that's why you need citizen-initiated referendum, because with citizen-initiated referendum, you can push back on laws that the government creates. You see. So the point of it is that we're sovereign. We're the sovereign here. But we just bought into, you know, if you were a king or a queen, you wouldn't wait 5 years to tell your government what to do. You would be, you know, if the government was leading and it was doing a great job, you wouldn't have to step in. You'd be water skiing all the time or laying on the beach. But the point is, if the government is failing you, you need to be able to step in all the time. And that's why we're campaigning for citizen-initiated referendum on a local level and also on a European level through the ECI. Now, we had it in our first constitution. We actually had it. Eamon de Valera was the first person to use it and to get the oath of allegiance to King George out of the Constitution. He needed 75,000 signatures. He raised 96,000. He brought the signatures to the Dáil. They said, we're not going to accept those. Then they had a debate, and they removed Articles 47 and 48 out of the Constitution, so he was never even be able to exercise that power. And then that power was never put into the Constitution. The framers of the first Irish Free State Constitution had that envisioned for us to protect us from political parties and outside political influence. That's why he did it. Now, or they did it when they were framing it in the Shelbourne. So to me, the answer to a lot of these problems, and Direct Democracy Ireland is campaigning for this. We see it as a strategy for real change. You know, we need to have real change in this country, and that's the way to do it, is to put ourselves back in charge. I am completely opposed to fracking. I think that fracking damages the aquifer. And they're putting chemicals deep down in the ground to release the gas, and I'm completely against it with everything in my being. So I would never, ever, ever, in any way support any kind of fracking, because I think it harms the environment and therefore harms us. And you know, if we're going to continue as a species, we need to protect the environment. So I'm totally against it. Okay, yeah, so, I mean, the thing about GM Foods is the classic situation where you have a very, very, very powerful multinational lobbying politicians, right? So not only are they lobbying politicians, but they're also buying up all the seed companies of the world. So they're really trying to control the food. And the only way that you can overrule politicians is through citizen-initiated referendum. I'm sorry that I have to keep harping on that. But if you really want to be powerful, because the multinationals are lobbying the governments, and when you have too much power concentrated in the hands of very few individuals, and you only have one or two go-to people, right? When the European Union was 27 countries and you wanted to go to war, you had to lobby 27 heads of state. Now you only have to lobby one or two guys or girls to go to war. So that's the problem. Citizen-initiated referendum is really the solution to a lot of these things. Now, I oppose GMOs. In fact, I saw a statistic the other day that 80% of the soybeans that are being produced in the world that are not organic have trace amounts of the pesticide Roundup in it. So if Roundup is a pesticide that is able to kill living organic species or biospecies, or able to kill life, then those pesticides are able to also lodge themselves in your body, because you would have similar receptors in your body, because that's the way life works. The biology for sight works across all the species, and it's very similar. That's why you can study a fruit fly and understand the sight of a fruit fly to understand human sight. So if you're killing living life forms using Roundup, then that pesticide is also attaching to your own receptors. And if you end up with cancer at some point, 20 or 30 years from now, or with liver problems or whatever, it's because you didn't fight against GMOs.
Thanks very much, Jan.
Chairman, there is a mix-up. I think the gentleman argued against growing GM crops in Ireland, which I wholeheartedly agree. But a lot of people don't know that most processed foods in Ireland already contain up to 0.9% of GMOs.
Correct.
That is the border where it's not needed to declare.
That's correct. That's correct.
If not all conventionally produced pork and beef in Ireland, these animals have been fed with GM food.
That's right.
Okay.
And so therefore the Roundup pesticide is actually getting into the food chain through the food. That's correct.
It's found everywhere.
That's why you need to eat organic food, because when you eat organic food, you rely on the certifier. And when you have something like the Soil Association, who's a very good certifier, you can also be quite confident that the food will have minimal trace amounts of pesticides.
Also,
It's all about your definition of sovereignty. It's like, for me, all power comes from the individual. When we fought our revolutions and we became sovereign, the people together are the sovereign, and we create a constitution to have representative government to represent us, the sovereign. So, to me, a multinational is operating in our sovereign space. All the resources belong to us, So we're the king, we're the queen, we're the sovereign. So I absolutely, categorically don't feel that if the sovereign people pass a law that says that we want to protect our environment, and a multinational thinks that they can pollute the environment and sue us for that because it affects their profits, I think they're crazy. And if the legal structure is going that way, then we need to change it. And whether we change it on a European level, which is very difficult, because remember, the Commission is being lobbied by huge interests. Even the MEPs, when they vote, a lot of the MEPs don't understand what's going on in the Parliament. I've talked to several MEPs about it. They get a little voting book, and they go like, oh, we're voting on this law. They're not even versed. They just go, okay, vote for yes on this one, vote no on that one. That's what's going on. So when you have these huge blocks like the EPP or the Social Democrats, most of them don't even know what's going on. So even if you do know what's going on, any influence that you might have might be, because I talked to several MEPs about this. Basically, a lot of people just sit there and they debate, and they look at their, if they know something about the subject, and if they don't, they just vote according to their little rule book that they're given, that's printed out on a daily basis or a weekly basis based on the vote that's coming up. But you need to actually lobby the bureaucrat who's actually crafting the law. But even if you're able to influence that bureaucrat, he can be overruled by his commissioner. So there isn't that much power. it's you know, it's the multinationals are lobbying on a very, very high level, and yeah.
Thanks, Jan.